All right, next on the bench today, a rainy day in St. Louis, is a WPC PowerDriver board, and somebody was chasing a reset issue, and they had the card on there, and they wholesale replaced all the 15,000 microfarad caps with these ridiculous looking wrong form factor caps. I'm not picking on whoever did this, that's what they had available, but look at this. This is pretty janky, as I might say. I've started replacing the power out connector, which was not replaced, even though the power in connectors were replaced. Now I'm going to replace these GI headers. There's at least one ripped through hole here that I need to replace. And this is where the unregulated AC voltage comes in. I'm sorry, AC voltage comes in for the unregulated 12 volts. They replaced C4 here in the center, but did not replace the most problematic cap, C2, which often leaks. I'm going to throw a easy SBC regulator replacement onto this board also, since the client was talking about resets. I might as well go whole hog on this. At one point in time, somebody was chasing a lamp matrix error problem. Here you can see that this LS240 and a couple others, the ULN2803 and a LS374 here, were changed out. So hopefully that work is good to go. But after that, we should be all right. Got a fuse that looks a little janky. Now, I test every fuse before the board goes back just by buzzing them. I do not make sure that each of these fuse values are what they should be. These should all be 3 amp slow blow. The GI is all 5 amp slow blow. And then over here in the power input, this goes 575 slow blow and then an 8 amp regular blow. Now, the CPU board that came in with this is a bit of a disaster, and there may have been a time when I would go after a board like this, but this board has got so much random corrosion on it that this is just not worth salvaging when you take into account the availability of replacement CPU boards from a number of sources. So I'll pull this ASIC out so that it's not damaged in the act of taking it out by the client, but I'm going to send this back to the client with the loose ASIC, and then they can swap the ASIC into the new board, the 6809 processor, and they're running Getaway L5 ROM in here. So those 1, 2, 3 chips need to be transferred to the new CPU. So let's get about the task of this driver board. The client reported that it was causing the displays to flicker. I don't know how a driver board can do that, but we'll see. So I've patched up where C30 goes, the trace that was leading from the positive side down to this 12 volt unregulated test point, and current limiting resistor in the LED was pulled off. And so I've replaced that with a couple of resistor legs. And then I look up here to see the next thing to take care of. And I notice that this heat sink is on upside down. This thing should be flipped around 180. And the only reason it was possible to install that upside down is because the form factor of this cap is incorrect. So I will fix that along the way also. I have completed the work here and walked this board over to my test bench. So here's the complete, I guess, list of things that I've done to it. That's 5x.156 headers like here, and these 4 over here. All 5 of these 15,000 microfarad caps have been replaced with a cap that is much, much closer to the form factor of the original. These are the original diameter. They're just slightly taller than the originals. I had to replace about half the through holes out of the 10, 8 here and 2 here. They were torn, so I used rivets to replace those. I've installed an EZ SBC 5 volt regulator in the yellow version. is an improved over the original green version, and it does not cause popping, I guess, in the speakers at power down. I have replaced C2, as I mentioned before. I always bend them over like that so you can see that there's no leakage under it. And I installed this 1N5401 blocking diode at the base of the sand resistor, and that protects C11 should this connector be misinstalled down here, which you wouldn't think that could happen. It does. All right, so let's test all the things that the PowerDriver board does, which is solenoid test, and we'll get this running. I have one of my bench CPUs connected to this, and it is running the WPC DMD test ROM. So it goes through the first 16 coils and then repeats. And then I'll quickly go to lamps and flashers at the same time. So here we go. Looking good. I'm happy to see that lamp matrix operating, given that somebody had been working up there in this area before. And the last thing to test is the general illumination. And I did buzz the traces. It's just easier to buzz the traces on the bench before I get over here. And those are all working perfectly fine. I did have to rebuild, pins, let's see, 11 and 10 on this connector. The through holes were torn when somebody replaced that connector before. There was a jumper on the back side of the board. I took that off. It's no longer necessary because I have a solid connection built with the rivet that I placed in there. So back in business. So you can see this, I guess the original complaint that the DMD was flickering. Let's see, let's get into display test, and we can turn on all the pixels of the display, and I'm getting no flickering at all. Again, I don't understand how a PowerDriver board could cause flickering on the DMD, since the the voltages and the data signals are all taken care of by the DMD controller. And my DMD controller is known working, so we get the RAM test okay at the end of it. So we're good to go. Sorry about the bad news on the CPU board that's too corroded, but you're going to be much happier with an aftermarket CPU board. Thank you so much for sending it.